Good morning, Commissioner. My name is Natalia Rodriguez. As you know, I'm Senior Commission Counsel to this commission. And I am going to be calling our first witnesses to the commission, Ms. Victoria de la Ronde and Ms. Zexi Li.
Ms. de la Ronde, will you swear on a religious document or do you wish to affirm?
Religious document, please.
We have the Bible, the Quran.
The Bible, please.
Please take the Bible and hold it in your right hand.
Does it need to be facing the right way?
For the record, please state your full name and spell it out.
My name is Victoria de la Ronde, and Victoria, Victoria, and de la Ronde is 3 words, capital DE, capital LA, capital RONDE.
Do you swear that the evidence to be given by you to this commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I swear.
Ms. Li, will you swear on a religious document or do you wish to affirm?
I would like to affirm, please.
For the record, please state your full name and spell it out.
My full name is Zexi Li, spelled Z-E-X-I, last name L-I.
Do you solemnly affirm that the evidence to be given by you to this commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, I affirm.
Thank you.
Okay, the witnesses have been sworn.
Thank you very much.
Just give a moment to registrar to take back the Bible. Okay, go ahead.
Good morning, Ms. Li. Good morning, Ms. de la Ronde. Can you both confirm that you are residents of Ottawa?
Yes, I am a resident of Ottawa.
Yes, I am a resident of Ottawa.
And Ms. de la Ronde, are you retired?
Yes, I am retired.
And Ms. Li, what do you do for a living?
I am a federal public servant.
And do you both live alone?
Yes,
Yes.
And were you both in Ottawa during the protests of January and February of 2022?
yes.
Yes.
Now, I want to speak a little bit about the impacts that living through the protests of January and February had on both of you. Ms. de la Ronde, can you describe for the commissioner what was the impact, if any, on your physical well-being?
The impact on my physical well-being is quite extensive. I certainly, during the experience, had difficulty sleeping. I had an effect on my lungs and my throat because of the fumes and other smells. And I also have long-term effects.
Can you describe those for us?
The long-term effects are loss of hearing, loss of balance, some vertigo, triggered by the sound of any horn now, triggered by certain music, as the music was very loud, and a physical trigger when I get a smell of gas. Both my throat and lungs start to feel infected. I had also a phantom horn blowing as an experience for a number of weeks after.
And to what do you attribute these physical impacts that you experienced?
Certainly, I attribute it to the very, very loud and constant noise from the horns, from the music, from the idling trucks. Even when the horns abated for a minute or two, the trucks idled. The trucks idled all night. And so it just was an assault on my hearing. And I can certainly tell now that there is a diminished function. I was able before to listen to media, for example, at a normal level of, say, 4. Now I have to turn it to 6.
And so can you confirm that you lived in the Centertown area or the downtown area? Maybe just give us a general sense of your location.
Yes, I am near to Laurier.
Okay. And what was the impact, if any, on your mental well-being?
Well, certainly, as I mentioned, it was such an experience of helplessness, especially during the event, where the horn blowing was so loud and continuous. There was absolutely no place for me to go in my own unit. There was no place that had any less sound. I checked different rooms to see, well, maybe I can sleep on the floor here. There was no place that had a diminished sound. And if there was, it wasn't a space like a closet that was big enough to sleep in. There was just no escape to that. So I felt trapped and helpless during that. During the fireworks, when the debris from the fireworks sprayed against my windows, I was just terrified that they would break any minute, because I thought, how could I do something, and what could I do at midnight, and who could come at midnight? And this is February. A broken window would have been pretty disastrous. So there was a lot of anxiety and discomfort.
And do these impacts on your mental well-being continue to this day, or have they abated?
Certainly, they have, some have abated, yes, and I work very hard for that in terms of on the mental well-being. It's still, I jump a lot when I hear a loud horn. And also when I get this smell of gas, definitely I have a physical reaction, which is quite distressing.
And Ms. Lee, I will ask you the same thing. What was the impact, if any, on your physical well-being of living through the protests of January and February of this year?
During the time of the occupation, I struggle to call it a protest because I know what a protest is, but it was incredibly difficult to get anything done because of the noise. There was a significant impact on things like focus and, just even living day to day. Sleep deprivation was one of the first things that affected me personally, and it also affected the animals that I live with as well. They seemed quite distressed. But for me personally, it was almost impossible to get a good night's sleep or a full night's sleep, if any. And if anything, it would be low quality and often interrupted by a sudden loud horn. And when it was quiet, and because there were brief periods where it was quiet, I was riddled with the anxiety that the horns were going to start again. And when the horns started again, we were left wondering, when they would stop, if they would ever stop again. And yeah, it was just day to day living within my own home, living in fear of the sound and the intrusion, really, that they posed just being outside on our streets. And further to that, it was unpleasant, to say the least, to exit my home, but it was something I did anyways, as I didn't feel like the whole situation was wrong, and I felt almost a little bit of a defiance, wanting to go outside and continue to live my life as best I could. And when I did, oftentimes I was harassed for wearing a mask, or I was told to smile more under my mask, or, just these kinds of comments that wouldn't have otherwise occurred and on a quiet, normal walk day by day. And I think what was one of the worst things was whenever whenever I chose not to engage with the individuals that were occupying my neighborhood, they would blast their horns at me with a smile on their faces, and then they would cheer in unison and almost take joy in my flinching and my recoiling from the noise that I had been essentially experiencing nonstop for the entire duration of the events that occurred.
And so can you confirm as well that you live in the downtown area south of Wellington?
Yes, I live near Laurier Street in Centertown.
Thank you. Ms. De La Ronde, can you describe for us the impact, if any, of living through the protests in Ottawa on your ability to go about your daily life?
Yes. I work very hard to be independent and safe as a person with a disability. That objective is very important to me, and every success in reaching that objective is coveted. So that was gone. I was trained to walk with the traffic, to walk with the flow, to negotiate and keep myself safe on the street. Of course, there was no traffic or no flow, no indicator. Or if it's idling, I wasn't sure if these big vehicles overhanging a small sidewalk, if they decided to suddenly shift or change, if they could see me. So it was terrifying. The sound was so high that I could not hear any chimes or signals that we use at the ends of the street to tell us that it's safe to cross. That was just not available. So it just was not safe in my world. Also, in terms of independence, I do everything myself. I order my groceries, I order prescriptions, and I take public transportation or private transportation to go to meetings, to go to appointments, to do my daily business. So I had everything set up for myself as an independent person living alone in downtown Ottawa, which provided such good services. But immediately, there was no taxi, no Uber, no paratranspo, no grocery delivery, which I depended on, no taxi even to go and get some, no prescription delivery. Some way had to be figured out how to obtain all the necessities of life. The restrictions on my ability to get food was gone, or was there. So that was the impact in terms of my mobility. So I found myself trapped.
And can I confirm, Ms. De La Ronde, I noticed you walk with a white cane. Can you confirm, do you have a visual impairment?
Yes.
Okay. And does that visual impairment then cause you to rely on sounds and hearing in order to get around outside?
That is a huge, huge assist and for me to have safe mobility outside and for me to remain independent, yes. Very critical are the sounds.
And so how did the sounds change then from kind of normal day-to-day to when the protest was happening in January and February?
There was absolutely no ability to negotiate my environment by using sound. The sounds of the horns, the sounds of the very, very loud music, the sounds of the people with lots of voices coming from all different places, all was disconcerting and just completely eliminated my ability to negotiate my environment independently.
Ms. Li, can you describe for us what you saw, what you heard, what you experienced when you did go outside and walk the streets during the protest?
Well, it was the middle of winter, so really the first thing you noticed when you stepped outside was all of the snow, because services were unable to be rendered due to the occupation that was going on. And further to that, the snow was often colored yellow or brown due to the public urination and defecation that took place gratuitously, often along the side of my building and just quite literally anywhere you walked, on every corner. And on these intersections, oftentimes there were illegal bonfires and, just trash burning right next to, cans of fuel, or near the same areas where these individuals would later set off fireworks. And I just remember feeling like it was such a surreal sight. It almost felt like you were in something like The Purge, because though I didn't often see direct acts of violence, there was a certain chaos on the streets, and that feeling of chaos and rule breaking and law breaking gradually increased as things progressed. Just, I need a moment. Just sort of on my daily walks, going to the gym, getting groceries, running errands. I often encountered individuals that were associated with the occupation, and being, I'm a small Asian woman. I wore a mask most of the time due to the situation that was going on. It was, like I said, it made you a target because it signaled to the people on our streets that we were not supportive of their cause and that we were not one of them. And in turn, as I mentioned before, they would increase their honking and target their honking and shout at us, shout at me about how they were doing things for us and that they were fighting for our freedoms, when at the same time I was unable to walk the streets feeling safe, really, because it didn't feel safe. My guard was up all the time, and you had to watch every detail so carefully because these people would just approach me out of nowhere, and you really didn't know what they were going to do to you. And especially after I took action as an individual, it became different being a person walking on the streets. But I was never deterred from going outside. There was only one moment where I was very, very afraid after my identity and name had been made public, and I had really covered myself up completely so that I was completely unrecognizable, to the point where my neighbors saw this and were very confused when I said hello to them. But after that, I think I realized there was almost a protection in the notoriety that I'd gained, and I don't know, I felt like it was almost safer for me to walk the streets than the people that I lived around because of my position in the whole situation. But that being said, when it comes to my day-to-day life, I'm a really friendly person. I know all of my neighbors. Well, I can't say all of them, but I know a good few of them. And one of my daily joys is chit-chatting with them in the elevator and seeing them on the street and saying hello. And what was truly, truly terrible about this time was seeing how people I knew were being affected, and knowing that for every one person that I knew that was going through a difficult time because of what was going on, there were 20 other people that I didn't know that were going through the same thing. I knew people that were being pushed out of their homes because they were literally having mental breakdowns because of the stress and the noise and just the terror they felt from the situation. And I don't think anyone or anything can discount those real feelings that people experienced and people had. And because of the action I took. I had encouraged a lot of my friends and neighbors to reach out to me and tell me their stories, because it was so important for people to know that this was a serious thing that was going on, that people were being really terribly affected by it. One of my neighbors, she had just had a newborn baby. Her name's Hazel. She was maybe 6 months old at this time. But I remember, like, I've watched Hazel. She's a really sweet baby, but my friend, she had told me that the noise was so terrible, but that sometimes just to get her to sleep, she had to take the baby out into the hallway, as far as from the windows as possible, and bounce her in the hallways to try and get her to sleep, before bringing her back into the apartment where there was just the unrelenting horns. And other neighbors who told me for just, a good 2-3 hours of nap, whatever they could get, they would go down to the parking lot and sleep in their car because it was the only place that they could escape to. And for me, second to the hallway, my bathroom was a little quieter, so I got some peace there as well.
So would you say that you felt unsafe walking the streets?
I didn't feel safe, but it's hard to describe it as unsafe at the same time, because I was actively being so cognizant of my surroundings, and I'm fast. I can move very fast. So, I was always ready to, take myself out of a situation where something might happen. And you know what, like a lot of the times when they're bouncing their trucks and their cars, and I don't know how to describe it other than like roaring at us, like roaring at me with like these large giant vehicles, it's the idea was to move quick and get where you needed to go. And that was the intention. And that's what you really had to do, I think, to stay safe, because when you didn't take your time, they would always get to you, like maybe not in the sense that you're thinking, but they would try and come up to you and convince you that they were doing the right thing. And they would say to me, on more than one occasion, I would try and plead with them because, there's a certain desperation in being left in the kind of situation where the people that are supposed to help you weren't helping you. And it was just ongoing for really it was going to be an unknown period of time, because really every day I woke up and I hoped that it was over, and it never was. Sorry, I lost my train of thought a little there.
That's okay. Ms. de la Ronde, would you say that you felt unsafe walking the streets?
Yes, for two reasons. One, of course, the inability to negotiate those streets safely. Because of lack of assisted, lack of sound was the big thing. Also, being very concerned about what was underfoot, because there was debris on the streets and it was winter and icy and slippery. So, and then always vigilant that someone was going to approach. On an occasion, there was a person who kept jumping in front of me. I was with someone else. I could only go out if someone came with me. And this person kept jumping in front and didn't allow me to pass. So when he was confronted, finally it stopped, but then sent messages, well, I love you anyway, they said. So that was a bit intimidating. And so in that way, I didn't feel safe for those two reasons. I didn't have all the faculties I normally use. And secondly, that someone was going to approach me, and either I was going to be accidentally hurt, or or my big worry is that I would bump into and hurt them too. So always vigilant and concerned. Does that mean I was feeling safe? No. No, I wasn't. I just thought if I didn't have to be out, I would not go out.
And Ms. de la Ronde, was there anything else that you experienced that you would consider to be a threat to health or safety?
the Sunday after the vehicles came in and occupied so close to where I live, the relentless noise was just so unbearable, and I was so exhausted from it. And I called and begged a friend, could you just please, I know you have to walk in and get me out. Can you? Excuse me, can you just please come and get me out? And she did. And 2 days later, we both had COVID. So, there were so many people on the street rushing toward us saying we don't have to wear those masks. There's just people around. Did I get it from them? I don't know. But it meant that I was completely stuck. I couldn't leave my home. I couldn't ask anybody to come and help. I couldn't go and stay with somebody else. I couldn't do anything. I had to be there to isolate for at least those 10 days. So once again, there was no place to go, no place to hide. It just went on and on.
And Ms. Li, what actions, if any, did you take because of your disruptions to your daily life?
Well, the first action I took was really what I consider to be, it was really important to me, I think, because of the nature of the occupation and what was going around in the media and the news. I thought it was really important for me to walk the streets and experience things firsthand. So I did that almost every day, and I took pictures and I took videos, and I remembered what I saw. And I spoke with people. I spoke with the people that were living on our streets illegally. I spoke with the people that were stationed on intersections to protect us. And
Sorry, do you mean the police?
yes, the police. And that was really the first action I took, just having my own account of things and really living through it myself. And like I said before, I really genuinely love Ottawa. I love my neighbors, and they mean a lot to me, even if they are somewhat strangers in a sense. And because of this closeness I heard a lot of their stories, and more so, I heard a lot of their frustrations. And as egg throwing began to occur from my building, I felt that, we really needed a medium to at least express what was happening to us so that we could feel at the very least heard and maybe diffuse some of the tensions.
Can you describe what you mean by the egg throwing?
Well, there were very large trucks parked everywhere, and in some of these instances, they were parked right next to some high-rise condo buildings. And as a result, some people may have gotten some cartons of eggs and, had their little retaliation in frustration, because really, what else could they do? And when that incident occurred, I remember the police actually came to my building to inquire about the egg throwing, as a complaint had been made by the truckers. And I remember that I felt it as an affront, and that a lot of my neighbors felt it as an affront as well when they were investigating something like this in the light of everything that was happening to us and what they were really ignoring in a lot of their statements and releases to the public. And as a result, I decided to organize a meeting with a number of residents in my building, with some Ottawa Police community liaison officers, just so we could have a recorded account of what our experiences were, and really to, again, diffuse the tension and really concretely say, what's happening here. We are telling you this is our experience, and we really desperately need help, because things have gone on too long, and the residents, honestly, they had wanted to fight back because they felt that nobody else was doing anything for them.
And what was the result of that meeting?
Following that meeting, maybe 20 of my neighbors showed up, and more had sent their stories through messages or otherwise through me. And we had communicated everything to the officers so that, again, it was recorded, and, all of us were there to attest to the fact that this happened, and they know what's going on, because we felt really and truly abandoned at that point in time. And after that, I ended up becoming the lead plaintiff in the class action, which brought my name and person to more public attention.
Okay, so we'll get to that in a little bit. I just wanted to get a sense for the honking. You both mentioned the sound of the honking. Do you have a sense for when it was? Was it all the time? Was it louder during the day? Was it just as loud at night? Can you give us a sense of that, Ms. Li, and then Ms. De La Ronde after?
Sometimes it's hard because that whole month essentially feels like a bit of a blur sometimes, but I do remember when it started on Friday night, it felt like in my memory that it never stopped, really.
So would that be Friday, the 27th of January?
Yes, that's when they began to roll in, and I remember when that happened, my feeling was that this is going to be a doozy, bad things are coming. But yeah, it was constant. It was like from day to night, even if it wasn't for every second, it was at least every other minute.
Okay, thank you. Ms. De La Ronde, do you have a sense for when the honking was louder? Was it constant 24 hours a day? Was it less at night? Was it the same?
When the trucks and other vehicles came into my area on the Friday evening, it was very loud. And on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I could sense the excitement and the electricity in the air. And at the beginning, I thought, I am so happy to be in a country where there's freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom to assemble. And that sentiment started to crumble as the loudness was all night and all that weekend. That's why I begged my friend, can you just come and take me out for a short time even, so I don't have to hear this? And the sounds continued constantly until at night, and they may have been somewhat diminished because were crescendos all during the day and toward the evening in particular, and then all night. When the injunction was put in place, then it abated a bit between 11 o'clock at night and then 7 o'clock. I could hear activity out on the street. I could hear a huge megaphone starting to advise, it seemed to me, a rolling thunder of horn blowing starting at 7:30 in the morning, and then the loud music, which you could hear every word of the music the songs that were being sung. So your question in terms of how loud it was, how continuous it was continuous. There was an abatement of horn blowing in such a crescendo between those hours, 11 at night and 7 in the morning. But the idling continued under my window, just with these huge vehicles, the sound of the idling echoing down in the canyon of our buildings all night. So there was no respite from an assault on hearing. I tried to wear earplugs, but they kept falling out. And then I worried if I wore an earplug, I wouldn't be able to hear the smoke alarm. I wouldn't be able to hear if somebody was pounding on my door to evacuate because there was a fire or an explosion outside our door. So I was caught in between. And of course, I slept with a mask on because of trying to abate the smell of the diesel and the other smells that were coming up in through the vents.
So I want to show a map now that's been produced at Exhibit D of the affidavit sworn by Aaron Bernard. And he's the Managing Director of Spatial Media. And for the party's benefit, it's at document COM 50736, if you want to look at that. So this map was created based on, yeah, you can click on that, based on data that was collected through the first 2 weeks of the convoy. And what we see here is just a standard traffic noise in Ottawa during the day. And this is just based on known decibel readings throughout the area. And the decibel readings were collected at different points in downtown Ottawa. And this is a visualization of that data that was collected. So if we go to week one daytime, thank you. So this is what it shows on this map based on decibel readings collected on the ground in different locations through the first week of the convoy. And if we just zoom into, it's a bit of a heat map, so the darker the color, the louder the decibels. And if you can just zoom in a little bit more. Okay, that's good. And so you had said, Ms. de la Ronde, that you live on Laurier. Can you tell us approximately a close intersection that you would be by, just so we can locate that on the map?
Yes, close would be Laurier and Kent.
Laurier and Kent?
Yes.
Okay, so if we can just zoom in on Laurier and Kent. You just have to zoom in a bit there. Yeah. Yeah, just move over to the left. Yep. So we got Lyon, we got Kent, and that's Laurier. Where's Laurier? Right there. Okay, yeah. So Laurier and Kent, we see between 90 decibels, and if you go up about 100, so between 90 and 100. Okay, and it says similar to a lawnmower. Does that accord with your recollection of the sound? It says as loud as similar to a lawnmower.
For myself,
Yes.
it was beyond the lawnmower.
Okay, so you would say it was louder in your experience?
Yes.
Okay. And Ms. Lee, an intersection that you are near, so we can kind of locate you on the map.
The intersection I live near would be Laurier Avenue West and Bank Street.
Laurier and Bank, okay, so just over to the right a little bit on the mouse, yeah, right there. That's the corner. Okay, so again, similar 100 to 110 decibels, similar to a lawnmower. Does that accord with your kind of recollection of what it was like?
Yes, however, I would like to note that there were points in time where, like Ms. de la Ronde said, there were crescendos, and during those crescendos in particular, there was a roving train horn attached to a truck. And when that truck was in our area, I would express that it was much louder and much more disruptive than the lawnmower.
Okay, and we're going to hear one of the recordings. If we go down to the blue there, you can see some of the recordings that were taken. So that one is at 100 as well in that zone. So it's similar to the area that you were in terms of the decibel readings. And we're just going to play it so that everyone here can experience a little bit of what you experienced. With your recollection of the sounds when you were either in your building or walking outside? Ms. de la Ronde?
Yes, that does accord with the sounds that were always present in my building, in my unit, except there's some sounds there not there that were even louder and more unnerving. When you hear this and it's 24 hours, it is just, it's damaging. It's damaging to the nerves. It's damaging to my health and well-being. So it's shocking. So it does accord, but there was more. There were times when it was more than this.
Do you agree with that, Ms. Lee?
I would agree with that. I would note that many of the trucks in my vicinity had what we would describe as aftermarket horns, where the horns attached to the vehicle were much, much louder than a standard vehicle would have. And several of these trucks were idled very close to where I lived and resulted in a much more deafening sound.
Okay. And Ms. Lee, you had indicated that you took videos and photos when you walked around. I just want to take you to some of those photos if we can.
Yep.
It's COM 50713. And maybe you can just, when it comes up, describe to us what we're seeing here and when it was taken and why you took the photo. It's ending in 713. Okay, yeah, let's see the whole, yeah, there we go.
So this photo was taken on the corner of Kent and Laurier. I took the photo because I thought that the removing of the tires was a very clear message from the occupiers that they were here to stay. Now, this vehicle in particular was removed sometime later, but I believe this was near the beginning of the occupation, perhaps around February 3rd.
Okay, thank you. And then the next photo is ending in 728, so COM 50728. Okay, and do you recall when this photo was taken and what we're seeing here?
I don't remember the exact date. It was either February 17th or 18th, if I'm not mistaken. This morning, this was after the injunction date. The occupiers on Kent Street, it was a very strong encampment, I would describe it as, and they were very much rooted in their position. During the injunction period, there was I believe this was like a Friday or Saturday morning, but they had collectively blown their horns at about 6:59 a.m. And obviously it awoke myself and many other residents in the area. And at this point, we had been, 20 days into the occupation. And I, for one, was desperate, not quite defeated, but also very angry. And I think at that point, the desperation was enough where I stood on the corner of Laurier and Kent. I left my home at about 7:30, and I stayed there for about 30 minutes to an hour just waiting for them to blow their horns because I was frustrated and I wanted there to be evidence, firsthand evidence of them defying the injunction order, them breaking the laws they were breaking. And I wanted to know for myself who exactly was there so that nobody could say otherwise. And I decided to take photos of the vehicles that were there, collect their information. And that was something that made them very upset, as really it was an open act of defiance.
And is this truck parked on the sidewalk? Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and was that common for trucks to be up parked on the sidewalks?
At this time it was. I also on numerous occasions witnessed trucks driving along the sidewalks as well.
Okay. And I see we are running out of time. So perhaps I will then invite the parties to ask you additional questions. Thank you very much. Oh, before we go, is there anything else that you would like to tell the commission? I do want to give you an opportunity if there's anything else we haven't discussed that you would like to discuss.
I would like to quickly note that in this image, the vehicle next to the white truck, the red truck, on this same day, due to my taking pictures, the man in the red truck was inside of his vehicle and he actually had backed his vehicle into me. I moved out of the way, but I presume it was for taking pictures of his license plate and what was in his vehicle. I also captured video of as I approached the vehicle after he had sort of backed into me. I didn't want him to be able to claim that it wasn't him in the vehicle, so I captured the driver in the video as well. And while I did so, he aggressively opened his door at me in the car. And at that point, all of the trucks in the area began blaring their horns at me. And there was another individual who had exited his vehicle and decided to start shouting at me, giving me the finger, and say that that the man in the truck hadn't done anything after I had called the police. He was yelling in the streets that the truck hadn't moved in over an hour, which I had direct video evidence proving that it was not true. So it just really showed to me personally that these people were willing to do anything and say anything to help each other get away with anything.
And Ms. De La Ronde, is there anything we haven't covered that you would like to say?
You know, I think you've done a very good job. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And I now invite the parties to ask you some questions.